Didn't
you
with
know
Hesse.
that?
I knew I joined.
Ages ago.
I knew when I lost the whip, I joined Distinguished Company because I thought that was Hesse. I didn't know you'd been
I got
kicked
an
out.
expulsion email 24 hours after saying on television I voted Lib Dem in the Europeans.
Yeah, well, the trouble is, you see, we're busily reinforcing each other's moderate views, we think. You have a chip. Yeah, there we are.
I don't think Jeremy can win.
No,
majority.
Jeremy could never become Prime Minister
I
in
don't
1,000 years.
Got close last time, though, didn't he? Close-ish.
He's a bogeyman. He's been successfully portrayed as a bogeyman. Boris's best argument for voting for him is to say, you've got to vote for me because otherwise you'll get Jeremy Corbyn.
I know.
I think what Boris does, he does blurt it out, you know. I mean, he uses these Boris phrases, these rather schoolboyish phrases, and he larks about.
I remember you said, when is he going to realise he's actually, for the first time in his life, got a serious job? Can he start taking it seriously?
Stop treating it all as a game, yeah.
Yeah, well, and he still hasn't taken it seriously. He still does treat it as a game, I think.
Jeremy's genuinely left-wing. I like Jeremy's naive sincerity. He believes it all. Boris isn't really a right-wing Brexiteer. He became a Brexiteer by accident.
Opportunist.
It's not John Major against Tony Blair, is it?
Brexit is doing so much damage to the country, so much damage to our politics. I genuinely worry that if Johnson gets a big majority, we are doing ourselves enormous damage. And I think the only way to keep the idea of a second referendum even remotely alive is for nobody to get a decent-sized majority. I know you've not been in favour of a second referendum, but the People's Vote campaign...
Yeah, I get quite rude about referendums.
I know you do, but and I understand that.
If it was the only way of stopping leaving with no deal, I would...
Yeah.
It's a hugely complex technical subject. I think to subject that to a yes-no opinion poll...
I agree.
That doesn't tell you much. I don't know a Labour MP I can think of who I think is genuinely anti-Semitic. I mean, not anti-Semitism, we know what it is, and it's very nasty. And there is anti-Semitism in the country, unfortunately, still. They're so fanatically against the government of Israel, and they spill over.
Yeah.
It encourages more anti-Semitism in those sections of the public who might previously have been a bit embarrassed and not let loose.
I think Corbyn's problem with anti-Semitism is more, it's almost like a capacity and competence question, that he didn't see that this was developing as the kind of issue that it's now become, because he's got these fellow travellers that...
Similarly, Islamophobia.
Yeah.
There isn't a Conservative MP who's Islamophobic.
It's interesting that you say you don't think there's a single Tory MP who's Islamophobic. I couldn't point you to anybody, but I kind of fear there might be.
There is a certain tendency to going for dog whistle racism in the Brexit campaigning.
Well, Johnson's a journalist, that's what he did.
Yeah, I think Johnson's not too bad on race and immigration, really. One or two of his allies. The reason they went on about Turks, which was a plain lie,
and effective.
In the referendum, quite effective, because they didn't think people were worried enough about white immigrants.
Yeah.
So if you started conjuring up millions of Turks, wink, wink, they are brown and Muslim, you know. We've got a lot of those already. Boris stuck to all this stuff about millions a week for the NHS. He didn't campaign on the Turks. That was Gove.
So when Johnson was taken to task, you know, the stuff about burqas and letterboxes and all that sort of stuff, if you are a senior level politician, you can argue that you're not an Islamophobe, but you know that your words are being welcomed by people who are. And you also know that's going to have an effect on people who are sitting on the top of a bus wearing a burqa. I think he's either conscious of the power of his words and doesn't care about the impact, or he's actually not conscious of the power of his words. I regularly quote it to people what you think your biggest mistake was. Speed humps.
The only one I ever admit to. Road humps.
So every time I'm going over a road hump with a taxi driver, my back goes, and I will say that's Ken Clarke's bloody fault.
Yeah, quite right.
Humps.
The biggest mistake a politician can make is to own up and admit to a mistake, because you will never forget it for the rest of your career.
So that's not the real mistake.
I will carry my mistakes to the grave. I do think the really important big mistake of the Blair government was the invasion of Iraq, which even I never thought its consequences were so tragic and long-lasting. So certainly the government with which you're most associated, I'm sure with hindsight you agree, that was a terrible mistake.
I'm sure with hindsight I agree with your assessment that you should never necessarily. I might pick you up at health of having been a bit slow on the uptake about the tobacco lobby.
Well, I'm a lifelong smoker.
And the public health agenda more generally, maybe?
I used to have an amusing relationship with the public health lobby.
Are you still smoking?
Yeah, no, cigars now.
Oh, you still, yeah.
I gave up cigarettes. Yeah, but you're quite right. I'm getting old, so I always tell the same stories. But when I returned as Secretary of State for Health and went into the room, the first question I asked was, what's happened to the ashtrays?
What are you going to do with the rest of your life?
You sound like my children asking nervous questions.
But I think in terms of your career as a whole, I bet there isn't a single Conservative alive that has more people viewing you as the Tory Prime Minister they could have tolerated.
Oh, that's a great club to belong to. The best Prime Minister, no, the best Prime Minister we never had.